Good morning. Just like to take a moment on this Monday morning to give you a little bit of encouragement, at least something that encouraged me this morning in my personal Bible study. I've been reading, or this morning I was reading in Hebrews chapter number 13, and verse number 5 and 6 just jumped out at me, and were an encouragement. And I just want to share some thoughts, and some of it goes back to yesterday morning's message there at church. And if you recall, yesterday we were in Luke chapter 5, and we were talking about Peter, James, and John as they surrendered all. In fact, in verse number 11 of Luke 5, it says they forsook all and followed him. And I talked about how sometimes God even needs to remove some of the things in our lives, some of the possessions, some of the opinions, some of the preferences we may have in order to take us and allow us to serve him the way we're supposed to. And when I was reading in Hebrews chapter 13, verse number 5, it says, "Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what man shall do unto me." As we've looked at as we looked at scripture before, usually when the word conversation is in scripture, it is not just saying the things we speak or our talk, although that is part of the word conversation. Generally, in scriptures, in the New Testament, when we see that, it is referring to our lifestyle. Now, our speech is a part of our lifestyle, but our lifestyle, our actions, those things we do, the things people know about us, what people see, they hear. So, conversation means a whole lot more than in our modern English. And so we could say, let our lives be without covetousness. I started thinking about, as I was looking at that, just studying those verses, I started thinking about it. The things that are covetous, or the things that cause me to covet, those things that pull me away and get my mind on, and I came up with this definition for covetousness would be wanting more than let me start over. I'm getting tongue-tied. Covetousness means wanting more than God intends for me to have. I believe God blesses us with so many different things, and when we are a follower of him, he desires to give us those things that we need in order to serve him. Again, yesterday in Luke chapter 5, we talked about how even Peter, as he was out fishing, the nets break and the ship began to sink. And those were blessings of God, not just the fish, but even those things that would hinder him from serving God to his fullest. God was blessing him by damaging those things and removing that hold that they had on him. So often the covetousness in our life holds us back from serving God as we should. In fact, what he desires is that we would be content. He desires us to be content. And one of the things, in fact, the main thing we ought to be content with, and I want to go back to Hebrews 13, verse 5, it says, "And be content with such things as ye have, for he has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee." If we are saved, we have Jesus Christ here with us. We ought to be content with him. In fact, again, I wrote a definition for contentment. God is with me, and that is enough. God is with me, and that is enough. And so, yes, God blesses us with so many other things. There's other blessings he gives us. But we ought to even look at those things. Those are gifts from God to be able to use, in order to be able to use them in service to God. And so, again, as I said yesterday, so many different things that we have, they can hinder us from serving God, or we can take those same things and recognize God has given them to me. They are His. I am just a steward, and so I ought to be able to, or I ought to be using those things in service for Him. He tells us He's never going to leave us nor forsake us. As we take our things and say, God, it's yours, it's for your service, I'm glad He doesn't say, hey, I'm just going to put you aside. He says He's never going to leave us. He's never going to forsake us. We can be content in that. And then it's verse 6, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear what man shall do unto me. I'm thankful for the fact that I don't have to be afraid. I have Jesus Christ with me. In that there is safety. No matter what man does to me, in the end, God is in control. In the end, with my life, with my very being, everything hinges on Christ, is how it ought to be. What can man do? They can kill me, so they send me to heaven. They send me to spend eternity with Christ. So there should be no fear of what man can do, but simply trusting Christ, being content with those things He gives us, recognizing those things, they are for His service. I've used this phrase last week. He does things for our good and for His glory. And I can trust and I can rest in that. And I hope this might just, a little short devotional might encourage you a little bit. But is there anything that might be holding you back in serving God today? I would encourage you to take some time, talk to God. Ask Him to show you those things that may be holding you back in your service. And it could be a possession. It could be an opinion. It could be a preference. It could be so many different things. But allow God just to show you those things, and then just give it to Him and allow Him to deal with it, trusting Him. He knows what's best, and let's find our contentment in Him. I trust you'll have a good day, and we will meet again later on this week.